I was thinking a moment ago if the enemies of freedom were sometimes annoyed at Frank Gaffney and greatly irritated by David Horowitz, think what they have to worry about now. Now that they've joined forces in a formal way, I think the synergy there will produce much more than the sum of the two parts, and hopefully many of you will be involved in the efforts to further irritate and annoy the enemies of freedom. It is really almost an indescribable honor for me. It hasn't really sunk in yet, and I suppose it won't until I actually leave the Senate, what some of the things that are happening to me now. But to have Frank Gaffney call and say, would you be willing to have your name associated with Henry Scoop Jackson in a lecture series that would bear your two names, I'm thinking, what's the catch? And there was no catch. It's in the cause of having an opportunity for lovers of freedom to unite a couple times a year with good conversation, dialogue, and opportunity to work further in the cause that we all share. And I can't think of a greater honor, first to have important policymakers, leaders such as yourselves who care about these strong issues, participating in such an event, but secondly, to be associated with Scoop Jackson. Scoop had attributes that I don't have, but I think it's useful that you have a Democrat and a Republican, both of whom believed and believe strongly in peace through strength, as Frank said, and who have been willing to work across the aisle and with different administrations over the years to try to achieve the result of a strong America, and to be thought of in the same terms as Scoop Jackson with all of his achievements is, as I said, an incredible honor, and I really appreciate it. I wanted to read this to you because it's a mouthful, but I'm going to reiterate the official name of the event this evening, the David Horowitz Freedom Center, Center for Security Policy Partnership, inaugurating the jointly sponsored semi-annual Henry M. Scoop Jackson Jon Kyl National Security Lecture Series. That's what we're doing here tonight. And it's a mouthful, but it means a lot. It means a lot both because of now the joinder of the Center for Security Policy and David Horowitz and all of his influence really throughout the country together to work together on these important events, and as I said, to have the honor of being named with Scoop Jackson. His was a hard-headed approach to national security policy. He was every bit the pragmatist, and yet, like a lot of people in this room, I'm sure, we may be deemed hard-headed, but we are also very soft-hearted when it comes to expanding the cause of freedom around the world, always first in the interests of the United States, but where we can, to help other people enjoy the same freedoms we have, both because it is the right thing to do and because, in the long run, it helps the United States. And I think that's what Scoop Jackson believed in. I was thinking of him, and frankly of this event, Frank, yesterday, when in the Finance Committee we had the markup of the legislation that would grant PNTR, or normal trade relations, with Russia, but only on one condition, and that is that if Jackson-Vanik has to be repealed in the process of granting this relationship, trade relationship with Russia, it must be succeeded by, you might call it Jackson-Vanik 2. It's the Magnitsky legislation, which would not only name and shame the people directly involved in the persecution and ultimately death of Magnitsky, the Russian lawyer who has been fighting for the cause of a rule of law in Russia, but also for those who follow him, human rights advocates who are persecuted in Russia. The people who do that will be also named by the State Department. They won't be allowed visas in the United States. They won't be allowed to have bank accounts here, and so on. The point is that Scoop Jackson would want us to be maintaining a vigilance about the importance of the rule of law and human rights in the world. Yeah, he was hard-headed, but he also understood those very important qualities that America holds dear, and we want to hold others accountable when it's appropriate to do so. I think he would like what we did yesterday by attaching that legislation to the Russian PNTR. And I believe that that will follow through in both the House and Senate, will be adopted that way. And that's the kind of approach that I'm proud to carry on in his stead. One other thing that I know animates many people, and knowing some of the people in this room, know that it is a part of what we believe and what we fight for, and that is the relationship between the United States and Israel, and specifically and more broadly, the policies of the United States relative to the Middle East, relative to terrorism, and to the kinds of countries that cause problems for both Israel and the United States. And it's not just because it's in the best interests of the United States to do these things. It's because of the shared values that we have with Israel. And when I think of the looming crisis on the horizon with respect to Iran, I can't help but think that a group just like this will greatly benefit from the conversation that you have tonight, with the insights that can be brought to us by someone who's a much closer observer, Carolyn Glick, a much closer observer of the scene in Israel, and that we can all benefit from her observations because of her the knowledge that she has about that. What I wasn't aware of until Frank told me was the fact that she now also serves in the capacity as senior fellow of the Horowitz Freedom Center and an adjunct fellow of the Center for Security Policy. So in Carolyn, you have personified the joinder of the two organizations. So what a great opportunity for us tonight. I'm very interested in participating, but again, mostly honored by the fact that you would name this lecture series partially for me, along with Scoop Jackson. And I just want to commend everybody here, the leaders and the followers, everybody who is supportive of both organizations. Thank you for what you do. Without you, they couldn't function, and if there would be a great silence and a great vacuum if David and Frank and all of their fellow travelers weren't able to fight the battles that they fight and that we fight. So I thank all of you and welcome you to this evening's presentations.